It is 7 o'clock on a Monday night at the Milwaukee Makerspace. So we're drawing stuff. Today, we are going to leave the comfort of the solid working environment. Ooh, and we are gonna enter the dark side that is sheet metal. We kind of delved into this a little bit last week, and we're gonna be fully a sheet metal project today. Sheet metal is an area that you can use when you want to have something that bends and folds. You don't necessarily need it to be made of metal to bend it or fold it. This example is a cardboard box. So if you're like me, you make your Christmas presents. And when you make a Christmas present, it doesn't come in a box, so it's difficult to wrap. So I make custom boxes for all my gifts. So we're going to be drawing this parametric box today. The kind of fun thing about this is we've got a list of parameters here that we'll start with. So we'll be able to measure the height and the width and the length of our object. Like, for example, this cup. We can measure the height and the width and the length of this cup. And then you could output a box. And then you can move on to the next one and just change these parameters and output another box, which is pretty cool. So, now that you know what we're doing, let's do it. All right, so I've got a new document here, and I am going to start right away by leaving the solid workspace and going to the sheet metal workspace. We don't need to do this at this point, just good starting point. You can technically do all of your drawings in any environment, and then once you start making flanges, you got to be in sheet metal, obviously. But we'll just start here in the sheet metal area. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to define some parameters. So normally when we make a drawing, we make a box that is 1 inch by 3 inches. And we just specify those dimensions by typing them in, right? We just type in, oh, this box is going to be 1 inch, and then the other side is going to be 3 inches. You can specify custom user parameters that you can reference in your drawings. So then when we make our box shape, we won't type in 1 inch by 3 inch. We'll type in something like length. And it'll know that the length is some amount. So this is pretty cool. I really like parameters. Sometimes I'll try to make entire drawings that are just based on parameters, especially drawings that I know are going to need to change in some way, shape, or form. If we have time at the end of this, I'll show you some examples of that kind of stuff. All right, so in order to enter our user parameters, we hit the little plus button where it says user parameters there. And now we can type in a name for our parameters. So we're going to have 4 different parameters. We're going to have a length, and that is going to be some amount of inches. And the expression here is kind of like the how many inches you want that to be. So, like, say, for example, the length of this cup, there's a length and a width and a height. I guess you can name those different things. So I'm going to call this 5 inches. And now I can enter in a comment here. This is just like some extra information. So, you know, if we don't remember what length meant, it was the diameter of the cup. And you don't really need to type that. I just wanted to show that you could have some comments here over on the side. Just to go and wait, what was my length? What am I measuring as a length? Oh yeah, that's the diameter. All right, we're going to do that 3 more times. So I'm going to hit the plus button for user parameter, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a length, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a width, and then I'm going to type in a height, and then I'm going to type in a width, and And the width is also going to be 5 inches. Again, it's like the, I don't know, diameter of the cup again. Or the cup mouth size, or any whatever makes sense in your brain hole. I'm going to do that again 2 more times. The third parameter here is going to be our height. Bless you. The height of my fantastic Subway cup is going to be 7.5. It's the height of the cup. And then the very last user parameter that we're going to have here is we're going to have a material underscore thickness. Or you could just call it material, but the idea is it's going to be the thickness of whatever our material is. And our material, like I make this out of like really thin, I make it out of like cardstock often. And then I just laser cut them. So like 0.05 is close enough. And I could call it my card stock. Something worth noting here is like when I measured my object, I kind of gave a little bit of padding. You know, I gave an extra ½ inch or so on each of the measurements. You could choose to have a 5th user parameter that was like padding or something like that. So some items you may want to have a ½ inch of padding. Some items you may want to have no padding at all. Some might need 3 inches of padding, so you could have a extra user parameter that was padding, and then you could add that in as you do your drawing. But for now, these 4 user parameters will get our box drawn. We got some parameters made? Happiness? Good. We've busily typed away numbers. This is the most fantastic. This is going to be the most interesting part of class, where I tell you numbers to type, and then you also type those exact same numbers. Fun. It's like spreadsheets. That's what we're going to do next week. Spreadsheets. This is literally a spreadsheet. All right. So I'm going to click OK. As much fun as spreadsheets are, we're going to move on to actually making a drawing. So now we can use those user parameters in the drawing that we make. So if I click on the Create menu here, and I come down to Create Sketch, you'll notice the Create menu is all different things because we're in the sheet metal area here. But for now, we just need to create a sketch. I'm going to choose a drawing plane to create this sketch on. It doesn't really matter which drawing plane you choose, but I always choose to draw on the top plane. So that's the plane between my green and my red axis here. And if you ever want to make sure you're drawing on the top plane, I can come over to my navigation cube in the top right-hand corner. And I can just click on the word top there. And now I won't make a mistake if I'm making sure I want to click on that top plane there. All right, so we've got our plane selected. Now we can make a rectangle. The kind of rectangle that I'm going to make here is a 2-point rectangle. And I'm going to start my rectangle right at the middle of my 3D world there, or in this case my 2-dimensional plane that I'm drawing on. I'm just going to click one time to place that corner. And then I'm going to move my mouse out. So a click and move, not a click and drag. You got it?
Well, first you have to create a sketch. Okay, click on Create Sketch. Okay, then pick a plane, click on the plane. Okay, now you have your rectangle and your sketch tools.
Yeah. All right, so now this is the point where we would normally type in numbers. So we would normally be like, oh, my cup is 5 inches and it's a 5 by 5 is what I'm making. But now we can, instead of typing in those numbers, we can use our user parameters. So I think that I was calling this my width. And if I just start typing in WI, it goes, oh, look, user parameter width, is that what you want to do? And if I actually want to use that user parameter, if I hit enter, it's going to pop in that user parameter right there for me. And now, just like I'm typing in numbers to bounce in between two measurements, I hit the tab key. And then I was calling this my length. And you can see it's even if I just type in L, it goes, oh, length? Yeah, definitely length. That's what I want. And if I hit enter, it'll go, all right, yeah, put the length in there. And now I'm going to hit enter one more time. So now you can see we've got that cube drawn, or that sketch drawn. Now, I'll point out now the reason why we wanted to do it this way is because it's going to be really easy for us to change the shape of our box for each present. So just to kind of illustrate how this works, I'll go to my modify menu here, and I'll scroll down to change parameters. And if I move this off to the side, so we can see our box at the same time. Now if I change my width, you guys don't need to do this, but I just want to illustrate that as soon as I change my width here, my width just automatically changes in my drawing. So if I made my width, 10 inches, it would just automatically update, which is fantastic. So this is the power of user parameters. I'm going to go back to 5 inches. It just automatically updates, and this will work the same way if this was a three-dimensional drawing too. They just automatically update as you change your parameters here. All right, so now that we've drawn the length and the width of our box, I'm going to say finish sketch.
I'm sorry, I missed how do I say finish sketch?
So finish sketch is if you click on the finish sketch button on your sketch palette. So your sketch palette window here, there's a little finish sketch button all the way at the bottom of that. The other way you can finish your sketch is there's a green finish sketch icon in the top right hand corner of the screen.
The one that says it?
The one that says finish sketch. Yeah, either one of those will work. Yeah.
I easily panic.
That's all right. Yeah. As you should. All right, so I've got a sketch. I'm gonna name that sketch because I think that's good practice. So in my sketches folder, I'm just gonna open my little triangle here in my sketches folder. I'm gonna click one time on that sketch one, pause, and click a second time. So again, it's a click one time, pause, click a second time. And now I can name this box length and width? Sure. And there's all kinds of... All right. So now we can start to make this three-dimensional shape. So believe it or not, we just need one sketch, and we can start making sheet metal pieces, which is fantastic. There are basically, for all intents and purposes, there are two commands in the sheet metal world. There is a bend command, or there's a bend tool, and there's a flange tool. We will not be using the bend tool. It's kind of, you really can make everything with a flange. A flange is all things in the sheet metal world. I don't know how that makes sense, but somehow it does. We're going to make a lot of flanges. So in order to make the base of our sheet metal, I'm going to click on this flange command here, and it'll pull up my flange window. And now I can type in, or I can pick the profile that I'm going to make my flange out of. So I'm just going to hit the little plus button here to add a selection set, is what they call it here. My selection set is basically just going to be my sketch. And when you choose that as your profile, it starts to look a little bit more three-dimensional. We can see we're in steel millimeters, and I'm going to ignore that for now because we're going to make our own custom sheet metal right now. So I'm just, orientation is one side. This is kind of similar to the direction that you would choose to extrude something. So you could extrude something up or down. And if I choose to do side 2, then that kind of shifts the other direction. I'm going to keep it at side 1. Side 1 is fine.
What does center do then?
Center would just be like right on the middle. So the sketch exists right in the
So
middle.
offset it in both directions, half
Correct.
of it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, for our purposes, our material is 0.05 inches. So if you're making a box with a tolerance for your object of less than 0.05 inches, this method will not work for you. You will need a, yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So we've got our body has started to form here. Now we've got a new thing that's popped up over here in our top here. Mine says rule, and mine says steel millimeters. Now yours might say something else, but that is okay because we are going to change that right now. So once we've got a sheet metal rule here, we've got a little icon right next to it that says switch rule. You can really only have one type of sheet metal per component. So we've got our main document component is the one we're drawing in here. If you had a document that had more than one component in it, you could have different kinds of sheet metal, I suppose. But there should be a way for me to make a new one here. Where is that? Manage materials? That's not it. Ha ha ha. All right, cool. So, I lied. Instead of clicking on this little icon and bringing up that little window, we do not want to do that. First, we have to click on the Modify menu and find the option for Sheet Metal Rules. Now in our little Sheet Metal Rules window here, I believe if we hover over any one of these options, we can either edit it or we can, I believe this, it is new rule. So we can kind of make a new rule based on an existing sheet metal rule set. And that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to find one that's in inches. It doesn't really matter because all that stuff is editable once we're in it. But the idea is we just need to make a new rule. And this brings up our new rule window. We all got a new rule window? Am I going too fast? No? Cool. So our new rule window, I'm going to give it a name. Or I'm just going to call this card stock.
Okay, Carl?
Yeah.
Why aren't you going with the cardboard material down there?
Do you have a cardboard material, or did I make that?
think you must have made that.
Yeah, I must
I
have
don't
made this.
have
I
it
think
yet.
I made this previously. So you
I have a
probably-
cardboard material,
You might have it from a previous iteration of this. Do you have a card?
31 thousandths, K factor,
Yeah, I know cardboard
15
material.
thousandths. Okay.
Yeah, that'd probably be fine. So I'm gonna name this cardstock,
Oh, stop, I said cardboard.
and cardboard is fine. You can call it cardboard. But the key here is we're gonna give it 2 pieces of information. So I'm gonna give it a thickness that is my. Oh, can I not do that here? Can't do that here. That's kind of interesting. I thought for sure I'd be able to call out my material thickness here, that my user parameter, but apparently I cannot do that. So I'm just going to type in 0.05 as my thickness. K factor is a weird number. I hesitate to go into too much information about this. So, when you bend a piece of sheet metal, I wish I had the whiteboard here that we used to have at the other building. When you bend a piece of sheet metal,
The outside stretches and the inside compresses.
correct. And the measurement that the K factor is that if you imagine a piece of sheet metal and you got a line straight down the middle of the cross section of it, the K factor is the difference between the outside bend and the middle of your piece because it stretched. For most materials, the K factor is going to be about half of the thickness of your material for all intents and purposes. It's
Is
pretty
why
close to
you
that.
have aluminum, stainless steel, blah, 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 as choices, because it'll modify the K factor.
Correct.
Based on what it can bend, how
Yeah.
it can be bent.
Right, so stainless steel actually is a little bit more than half because it doesn't really bend as well. Aluminum, you can get a pretty tight corner in, but yeah, so for our purposes here, we're just gonna roll with it as being half of our material thickness. Oops. Oh, I can't do math here either. That's really interesting. Normally I can just do math. So.
When you put 0.02, okay, so you actually you don't put 0.5, you put 0.025.
Correct.
Actually is half of whatever it's,
Yeah.
okay.
Correct. And then I'm just gonna hit save here. There are like K factor calculators and stuff like that online.
I was kind of wondering if that's what that was, like if you would put in 0.5, would it calculate out half of the thickness?
Yeah, ish. Yeah.
I mean, because 0.025 K factor would put it way to one edge. I guess that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking.
No.
I mean, is the K factor the value, like half would be 0.5, 0.25 would be a quarter of the thickness, or is it literally
Did I
half
not-
of the diameter?
Is that not right? Should it be?
I don't know.
Well, it should be half of the thickness.
Okay.
So half of
I
my
know
thickness
I
is.
know what the answer, what the end result is, but is that the K factor asking for exactly where that line is? Or is it saying what factor of material thickness do you want?
Yeah. So.
I mean, for 50,000, it really doesn't make much difference. But
Right.
if I'm doing a 1-inch material, and
So-
I put in
It's a lot of hogging.
yeah.
Finding a K factor is really a much more complicated thing than just determining half of the material thickness.
And it depends on the material too.
right,
Because they
so-
have different characteristics.
Yeah, exactly. So, and K factor is not just like half of the material. It has to do with what is the K factor
We're just
calculator?
gonna basically assume an ideal material that's gonna,
would be half.
Yeah.
where it's.
So I
excess
mean,
is
would
gonna
I
be
put in
right the middle.
0.5, or would I put in actually
0.0.
half of the thickness?
0.025.
Or would I put in 0.5?
No, you would put in 0.025.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah.
an absolute relative.
Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to complicate.
No, you're all
things.
good, you're all good. I saw a really good
I love
K-factor
when people
description. If you want to, here we go. So Send Cut Send has a really good explanation of K-factor, where they talk about all these measurements here and how they add up to whatever your K-factor is going to be. Because when the material stretches, it also shrinks, and when this material compresses, it also expands. So the radius that you intended isn't the radius that you get. It's a whole complicated thing. If you're really interested, I would highly recommend looking at this video from Send Cut Send. All right, so, but for our intents and purposes, we're going to do 0.025. I'm going to hit save. And now I can just close that window. So now in my sheet metal rules here, where I've set it, initially I had it set to steel millimeters. You can have it whatever yours was default. But now we can change that to our cardstock sheet metal rule. And then I can say okay. And you can see it kind of shrunk down my size here.
How did you get that menu to change it to the?
So, if you hover over your cardstock rule or our sheet metal rule in our browser here,
Oh, okay.
you get the little icon that
Got
appears
it.
next to it for change rule. And then we've got our sheet metal rule window that we can choose our cardstock from. Yeah. Cool? All right, so now we can start making the walls of our box. We're going to make the walls of our box with the magical flange tool. So from the create menu, I'm going to come up and grab this flange command here. And I'm going to grab each one of the top edges of my box. I'm just going to click on them each successively, and successively. And I'm just going to pull up this little, this flange. I'm pulling up flanges.
So I just, the last and final one, you just grab the arrow and drag up?
Correct, yeah. We're just going to grab that arrow, we're going to pull it upwards. And now, I've got a number that I can choose to type here. But we're not typing numbers tonight. We're typing parameter names. Yes, exactly. So, the parameter that we're going to type here is my height. And that's going to make a nice tall box for me.
Oh, sure did.
All right.
Okay, Carl?
Yeah.
How did you select the edges? I tried clicking on the edge. I clicked on flange, tried clicking on the edges.
So if
Now, of course, now it'll cooperate.
I have that power. I can
Make you look like a fool.
I scare the Fusion 360 demons in your computer. And sometimes I find it's as easy as getting people to zoom in. So, like if you're zoomed out, it's such a small. There's so many different edges over here that like sometimes Fusion's like, what are you trying to click on? I don't know. You can't tell. There's not enough resolution for me to tell what you're trying to click on. So you just gotta kind of zoom in. I think that's 50% of the time that's the issue. And again, I'm just gonna drag up. And we're typing our height. And I'm gonna go around and see if we got boxes with height. Box. Nice boxes. All right, cool. So, we're close to having a box.
Well, my definition, never mind. I just asked that, will it be a box?
Yes, definitely. So also we need to be able to attach these items to each other. So we're really just, this is just a seam right now. Boxes really have like tabs on the inside that you can kind of attach to each other in some way, shape, or form. So let's go ahead and let's make that attachment now. I hope I didn't do something wrong already. But let's go ahead and make that attachment now. So if I click on create, I can come down to guess what, the flange command. I am gonna add a flange to, if I just add that flange to the inside, oh look at that, perfect. So if I add a flange to the inside corners of this side of my box here. See, it's doing it to me, Mike. It won't let me pick. I wonder if I have a measurement here. So if I had a measurement typed in for a height for this, then it wouldn't let me choose some geometry. So that could have been it. You may have accidentally typed in a measurement. Now, our tabs here, we could specify an amount. I suppose we could have made a user parameter for tabs, but I'm just going to make 1 inch tabs. 1 inch is a phenomenally adequate tab.
Alright, so I've gone, oh crap, I lost everything. What did I do?
Uh-oh.
You probably hit an eyeball.
Oh, yeah.
It all,
So if you lose track of your drawing, like you're like, hey, where did all my stuff go? My go-to is your navigation cube up at the top. There's a little home button. If you click the little home button, do you fly back to where your stuff is?
I have a square now again, but
All
I
right,
don't
that's
have,
good.
I don't have my, oh,
Yeah, you've got a flange. Try it again. Looks like you didn't. Try making your tall flanges again. So I click on the flange command first.
great. Back to good, alright.
And then you can say OK.
Okay, I think, okay, and then I go to flange again.
Yeah, there you go. And now you want to try to find those inside edges of one side. So we just need inside edges over on this side here. Here's an opportunity for us to talk about the bend position. So our bend position for these tabs is we're setting it to inside here. Now you can see if I change that to outside, actually that almost looks better, doesn't it?
How many of those overlap flanges do you make? One on each corner?
One, yeah, so I'll make one on this side, and then I'll make another one over on the opposite face.
You use a separate flange command for every
I do.
thing? Okay.
Now you probably don't need to, so I could just add another selection here, and I could choose, yeah. I guess you don't need to. I could just hit this plus button again, and I could add this other flange, and maybe this is probably a better way to do it. I guess, is to do all four at the same time. Because they're all the same distance. They're all the same height. The flange height is the same for all of them. I wonder if I do change that to outside, if that makes it just a tighter box. Might. It's weird to me that they look like they're combining. I'm gonna step ahead for a second and just make sure. Yeah, that's what I thought. So if your flanges look like they're combining with each other, that is not what you want. You want your flanges to look like they're slightly separated from each other.
How do we make that magic?
Just by messing with the bend position. So I think the default is inside. If you set it to outside or adjacent or tangent, it might combine your shape together, and you definitely do not want to be combining your shape all together there. So
at this point, I did, like you said, I've done 3 out of 4, and I'm touching, so I have to, but I can't get to where you have edge 1, 2, 3.4. I don't have a choice at this point.
Click cancel on that. So I think you want to go to one of your previous flanges and edit that. So if you right click on it and then say edit feature.
I'm sorry, edit feature.
And now kind of zoom out so you can see what flange that is you're editing. So that's that flange over there.
That's the first one, I think.
Yeah.
Or last
So if you zoom in on that so you can get a little closer to see exactly what's going on with it. And you want to look at like the top edge.
You've shown me how to do that. Go down.
Yeah.
Alright, so inside, and I click this to outside.
Well, mine works for inside. Inside looks like the way we want to be. But I'd want to see your box and closer.
Is that close enough?
Well, we want to see the gap between the.
I'm not showing the gap.
Yeah. Zoom in more. Is your box really big?
Should be 7 inches by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like it is combining them. So try setting it. It says outside. Try setting that to inside. So you want to set it to inside, not outside. So you're on outside right now, and you want to set inside. There we go. Now we got a little gap in there. Cool.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so now I'm going to click on OK here. Now we just have 2 more flanges to make. So from the Create menu here, I'm going to come down to the flange command again. I'm going to make a flange. So I've made a flange on this sides here. Now I want to make the top. So to make the top flange, I'm going to make sure I just pick on an opposite side here, or an adjacent side, I guess that would be it. So if this side has flanges that come around and this side has flanges that come around, I want to make my top on a side that does not have flanges that come around here. And I want to make that, here I'm I'm on the outside, and I want to make it a distance, or the height of this flange is going to be either my length or my width, and I don't know which is which, and they're both the same. So I'm just going to pick my width. It's interesting how it's combining it. It's going to be my width minus my material thickness. So the top of my box, I made one more flange, and that flange is the height of that flange is my width. So it's the width of my box here, but it's minus the thickness of my material, because I want to have a tab that it sticks in. I stick in the inside of my box there. Does that make sense?
So I say width and then subtract.
Correct. Width, and then subtract, and then both of those things, when you type them in, it'll just start guessing it for you. So if I type W, I go, oh yeah, width. So I can hit enter, and it'll put my width in there, and then I can hit the minus sign. And what do I want to subtract? I want to subtract my material. And as soon as I start typing M, it goes, hey, your material thickness, that's what you want to subtract. And I can hit enter there. Now it's done a good job of defaulting here to outside. Because if this were inside, I'd be mashing my box all together. You could see the flange that I would be making if I chose my bend position to be inside would be colliding with my existing material. So outside is definitely the way to go here. And I think if I say okay, oh, it's giving me an error. So I wonder, compute failed. So I think that it wants me to change. Does it want me to change something? Yeah. If I change it to adjacent, there we go. So it wants me to change that flange from outside. Outside is making it collide with this body a little bit here. So we need to change that to something where it won't collide with that body. And it seems like adjacent is the only option there. You know, this is the thickness of a cardstock here, so I'm not worried about this gap at all, because I'm looking at such a close up there. How are we doing?
Not well.
Yeah, so now if you drag in that arrow, there you go, and the distance there, you want to be either your width or your length, one of those two.
Yes.
And then you want to subtract your material thickness. There you go. And then your bend position is going to be adjacent, which it is.
Minus material over
There we go.
2.
And then your bend position. Oh, you're making a split box. That works. There you go. All right, cool. So change that to adjacent, and now I can say okay. And now I can do my final My final flange here is I'm just going to grab the flange tool one more time, and I'm going to choose the inside edge of this box. So my box folds over the top, and then I want a little end that I can tuck down inside, 1 inch, and we're probably gonna. Oh, is it gonna let me do that at all? You know what? I think I need to. Yeah. All right. So it's gonna give me an error here because I
Double
realized.
Material thickness.
Yeah, I need actually double my material thickness. So this flange went too far. So now when I bend down, I'm colliding with my material. But that's okay. So I'm going to let it collide for now. And I'm going to say okay. Now I know that there's a problem because it's giving me a warning. So it gave me a warning that popped up down here. Gave me a warning here on my in my timeline. But thankfully everything is parametric, so I can go back in time to the flange I made, to this next to last flange I made where I made my top piece, and I can change that distance. So if I right click on that object here, I'm just going to zoom out so you can see what's happening. If I click on any of the icons down here, it kind of tells me what flange I was making for that icon. So that icon is that flange, that icon is those flanges right there, my inside flanges. This icon here, those are my side flanges. On kind of a side note, any of these icons down here, I can name them. So you know how I like naming my sketches? You can also, if you want, you can name your icons that are down here in your bottom. Say you've got something that's just a pile of flanges like we got right here, and you want to make it easy for somebody else to review your drawing. I could change this to top flange. And now when I hover over that icon, not only does it highlight that thing, but it also says, oh hey, that's your top flange, dude. That's where this person made a top flange. Anyway, we can edit that feature, and I'm gonna add in, it's actually my material thickness times 2 is what I think we're gonna end up needing to be here. So the way that I'm gonna do that in my window here, let me make this window much bigger so it's easier to see. So I'm going to add some parentheses before my material thickness. The multiply sign is above the 8 key on my keyboard.
The asterisk.
Yeah, the asterisk is actually the multiply. So if I take my material thickness times 2 and put it in parentheses, it'll do that first, and then it'll subtract that from my width. There's like an order of operations there in math. And now if I say OK, it still gives me an error. So I'm actually going to, what if I multiply it by 3? There we go. If I multiply it by 3, then it tucked right in. You can see it tucked right in there. There's a real nice close-up of the way that whole scenario works. You still got an error? Let me come take a look. Straight from the top downwards. before that. Flange right before that. Now edit that one. What if you make that flange only like 1 inch? Like get rid of all that just as an experiment. Get rid of that whole thing. And then just delete it and make it 1 inch. And then you say okay. Alright, so your error goes away there. So now what if we try it again? And what if we get kind of close to that? What if it's your width or whatever that was minus your, and let's try your material thickness times 5 or 10 or you know some pretty large number that you know is. There you go. So it must just creep kind of just so slightly.
So we did 3.
Yeah, I think that was the wrong one. It's the one before that one. There you go. Yeah, I wonder if we had a. Oh yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if we could do.
No, good check. But it wasn't done.
Yeah, for some reason it wants to be a.
Oh, is it the way I have this folded? Here it is. It's hitting this corner. You must have folded it somewhat different than the way I did it.
Yeah, possibly.
That's why. It's, yeah.
Oh
got
yeah,
these
so there
two
you go. It's
corners.
that corner there.
So because of the way, I must have picked some different edges.
Okay.
Because of the way I did it.
That could be.
So I have to have slightly more.
Yeah. All right, so now that we've got our box here, let's unfold it. This is the magic of sheet metal here. So we can just take this box, and from the create menu here, we can say create flat pattern. And if I create a flat pattern, and I'm going to rotate to the bottom of my box and choose the bottom of my box as the stationary face. So everything is going to unfold to that stationary face. So I just rotated to the bottom of my box. It doesn't really matter, I guess, which one you pick. But you just need to pick one of your faces as a stationary face. And I'm going to say OK. And then it explodes out into a flat pattern, which is pretty cool.
It just nuked itself.
Yours will that also?
It disappeared.
Yes,
It's
same
gone.
here. I went back.
I unfolded it enough, but a little different
What
way.
do you mean nuked itself? Oh yeah, you got an error there. Something in that flange is colliding with box material around it.
So edit feature.
So that flange there is overlapping the box there. You want to change that to inside. And then if you say OK, there we go.
Now what do? I go create.
Yeah, create flat pattern. And then
I'm gonna
you'll
make
choose
the
a
bottom.
stationary face.
Did you choose the actual bottom of the box or the front of the
You've
thing?
got an error there too, so you've got, so something is overlapping, just,
I just added one more material thickness and I got it. I think it depends
I
on
tried
which
going up to
flanges you
I
choose.
tried going up to 5 material thicknesses, and it still just laughed at me.
yeah, so you're gonna find where something is overlapping there. In the flange, probably right before it. So So not that flange,
No.
but the flange before that flange.
Okay, length minus 3 material thicknesses here. I tried going like up top.
So look at it from like the side. Oh, here, you change that to outside.
Oh, okay.
And now you say, okay.
So let's go back to 3.
Jesus.
No, I'm Carl. Sorry.
It worked.
Okay, good.
So you are Jesus.
Nope.
So try looking at it like sideways. Maybe we can see where the collision is happening. So just click on like your front face. And then zoom way in there.
On the top corner.
Yeah, so I bet it's hitting that edge there. So if you try changing it from outside to another option. Try like adjacent. There we go. Now say okay. And it doesn't look like looks like it's sticking out too far. Try, oh wait, but it unfolded. It's good. The arrow went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's edit it to 2 material thicknesses.
Looks like it's adding, not subtracting. It should be subtracting inwards, not adding outwards. Why does it add outwards when you subtract the material thickness? Yeah, that's weird.
Because I have material thickness minus parentheses x times, or length minus parentheses x times material thickness.
Huh. Yeah, so when you're adding more material, so here, let me show you what mine looks like when I do that. So it's this feature here. And if I zoom in, we want it to end before our box. So when I change this number here, it shrinks. If I go 4, it's there. If I go 6, it's back even further. So we want. Does it matter if you multiply? If I have 5 times, nope. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happening like that. But that's an interesting thing. But we'll solve that problem a little bit later, because the only other thing I wanted to do here is I'm going to turn my flat pattern back on. I'm going to say okay. Sure. I just wanted to illustrate that we could change things about our box now and have it update. So remember way back at the beginning of this class, we had these user parameters that are not part of a flat pattern. Well, anyway, so I can export this DXF right up here. That is my box flat pattern DXF. That's a DXF file I can cut right out on a laser, right? So now I've got this box exported and cut out. And now I'm on to my next present. So if I come up here to modify and change parameters, my next present is this stapler right here. And this stapler is 7.5. And the length is 2.5.
I'm sorry, how do we get back to the parameters again?
So in the modify, if you leave your flat pattern, so you left your flat pattern, you can, yep. So then you can just say change parameters.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
There you go. And now the height of this stapler. Man, somebody's gonna be really excited to receive this stapler. This is a really nice stapler. This is a high quality. So as I change those parameters, my box automatically updated here. And I can just reactivate my flat pattern. And I can push export DXF, cut that on a laser, move on to my next gift. There's really only 3. I have a small family.
How do you get out of flat pattern, Carl?
There's a finished flat pattern icon near the top right hand corner. It's kind of like the finished SketchUp
Okay.
icon. And that will exit you out of the flat pattern. You know, I think just as a kind of a side note here, I'm pretty sure that I can make edits to this flat pattern object here. Like, for example, I could add in a couple of fillets. So now I've got a curvy edge that I'm tucking in there. And I'm pretty sure that reflects inside of this box. You can look inside of an object. We probably haven't talked about that in class. Oh, it actually doesn't. So you can't really add a fillet and expect it to reflect that same way back in the inside. But if I go back to my flat pattern, the fillet is still there. Whether that fillet stays there if we start messing with his size a whole lot, I'm not sure. But that's our class for today. Making boxes, custom boxes.
Thank you, Carl.
Custom boxes are cool.
Now, I've got a question, maybe you can do it, maybe you can't. On that box, if I wanted to add tabs on either side.
Of
Okay, at the very top where you've got the top folding in.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times you like to have tabs on the side for the top to rest against. You know, like a 1 inch.
Oh,
tape.
sure. Yeah, totally.
Will
So
that modify the width because of the flanges that are bent in on either side? I mean, can you adjust the width of your flange, so to speak?
yeah, my flanges don't need to be like a full length flange.
Okay, I
So here, if I come up to this flange command here, you're saying like,
guess make that like
like-
½ inch long like we did on our sides.
If
Is
this
that going to
comes
go
in-
because of the fold in from either edge?
we make it 1/2 inch in, because of the fold in on this side is what you're saying,
Yes.
because we got that little collision there. So what I'd probably do in that case is, we have chosen to make all of our edges full edge flanges, so it's the full width is what's bending over. You can just we could make a symmetric flange, and then I could just
Oh, okay.
cut this in a little bit here.
And where did you select that from?
This is in where it says edge 1 here.
Okay.
Normally it's set to full edge,
Okay.
and you can change that to other
Symmetric.
options. So I chose symmetric, and then I just kind of pulled this arrow in a little bit, and it'll make it so it's not the full length. And
Because then you could put a flange on either side for your lid to rest against.
exactly, yeah. And maybe I'll put it out as far as I can. If I just look at that from the side. And just kind of pull it out that way. There we go. Then that tucks in nicely. And it just updates in my flat pattern. So now my flat pattern here, this is my little extra 1/2 inch little bit that I added there.
Okay.
Yeah, sheet metal's pretty cool. If you've not used a sheet metal brake before, now you would not be able to make this out of sheet metal.
It's too tight.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't really make a fully enclosed box with a sheet metal brake. Is that, does that seem right to you? You can really only bend like 3 sides, and then the spacing in between your 3 sides is dependent on like the tool you're using, kind of. You know, that some tools will be able to bend in a 3-sided shape that's tighter.
You need special tooling.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
have to have a gooseneck die.
Right, but you wouldn't be able to, you know, bend that after all the other stuff is bent. You can't make a fully enclosed shape with real sheet metal on a brake. It's just physics. So, all right, cool. See you next week.